All right, let's start up by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Welcome to another live lesson. This one is, it just gets better and better, LOL. And what I mean by that, um, just got um, some news, a video from Eldai Knopp, and pretty much he sent me a video with Charlemagne speaking on this guy Trump, you know, and everything that he's doing right now. So apparently, in a roundabout way, Trump pretty much declared martial law. I have an article I want to read. I found the article online. I had it on my phone. The other one, I don't have any service on that phone. I just use it for the scriptures and stuff. And pretty much, you know, it kind of somehow messed up, so I can't get to it. But what I did was I just took some snapshots from my phone, so I mean it's not super clear, so I'm just bear with me. I'm gonna try my best to read some of it and just take it from there. But yeah, man, it just gets better and better. 2020 year prophecy. Things are ramping up more and more every day, and we're just watching the whole thing unfold, right before our eyes. So, excuse me, without further ado, I'm just going to go into the article. Like I said, just bear with me because can't really see it that well, but I'll try to do it the best just as I can. It says, has Trump declared, this is from The Guardian, has Trump declared war on the U.S. to save his own skin? It says, in a speech on Monday, the president made clear that he will not disappear without a literal fight. Terrifyingly, this may win him another term. Did Donald Trump just declare war on the U.S.? Because that is certainly what it sounded like. After spending the weekend hiding in a bunker and firing off incendiary tweets, Trump finally addressed the country on Monday evening in the first official speech since the killing of George Floyd. It says police sparked global protests. Hashtag bunker boy, I guess that's what they calling him, stood in the White House. All that shit he was talking. Why you hiding in the bunker, motherfucker? Hashtag bunker boy. Stood in the White House Rose Garden and threatened to mobilize the American military against the American people, branding himself the president of law and order. Trump vowed that if violence and looting continued and mayors and governors did not take action, he would deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem. It is no exaggeration to the president of the U.S., the country declared itself world's greatest democracy, threatened to something about deploy martial law. All right, so I mean that's pretty much it. Like I said, I wanted to read more of the article. It's a short article. I was going to read the whole thing. It was a pretty good read, and it was kind of short, but nevertheless, it is what it is. Now, another thing I did, hopefully it'll come back up. If not, then we'll just have to skip that too, is I actually went on Wikipedia and I found, the definition for martial law. It's a long read, but I'm just going to read just a few points out of here because this is pretty much what is declared here in so-called America, and really around the world pretty soon when they start deploying the military, in these different cities. But this is done in stages. Because remember, you had the coronavirus and you had the declaration of a state of emergency, where FEMA, pretty much took over the U.S. Now we have this guy, hashtag Bunker Boy. You know, they pretty much declaring martial law on the American people, saying that if these governors and senators and stuff don't quell the violence, which is being started by so-called white people, Edomites, in most of these cities, that he's going to deploy the military. So pretty much that is an act of martial law. So martial law is defined as martial law is the imposition of direct military control of normal civil functions or suspension of civil law by a government, especially in response to a temporary emergency where civil forces are overwhelmed or in an occupied territory. So that's right now, he's saying that these mayors and senators and stuff are overwhelmed and they can't handle the load, so to speak, that comes with that title. So he's gonna help them out by sending the military in there, which is a total declaration of martial law. So pretty much when I read that, we've gone over scriptures before on these different topics, and what it brought to mind was pretty much 70 AD and the way that the military pretty much to came into Jerusalem and besieged it. And Yahushua spoke of this prior to this actually happening. This is the book of Luke, chapter 19 and verse 41. Boy, oh boy, Satan jumping on everybody. Luke 19 and 41. And when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it. So this is dealing with Yahushua. Why did he weep over the city? Because he actually saw the devastation that the Roman military was going to bring upon the people, the men, the women, the children, pregnant women and all of that. He actually saw that in a vision prior to uh, it actually happening. There's some fucking weird people in this world, boy, I tell you. Anyway, so he actually saw it, so that's why he wept over the city, and he was feeling bad because he saw the total disaster that was going to take place in 70 AD. He saw the deaths of all these different Jakes, men, women, children, pregnant women. He just saw the total agony that Jake was going to go through not too long from that point, which is approximately about another 30 some odd years after Yahushua went back in the spirit world. So when he saw it in the vision, he cried. And this is what he said concerning it. He says, saying, if thou hadst known, even thou at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace. And that's it, the things that belong unto thy peace. Meaning, if you would have known that in the future there was going to be, and some of those people were around his age. Some of them were a little younger, some of them might have been a little older. So by the time he went back in the spirit world, it was 30 some odd years later. So most of those people were still alive. Some of the younger people were older. Some of the people that were his age were like elderly, but they got the business from the Romans, from the Roman army, because that was a part of the prophecy. Matter of fact, before we read on, let's go real quick to Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9 and verse 24. And it says, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. And this was a prophecy of 70 AD that was going to take place, So when Yahushua came on the scene, he already knew the deal, and that's why he's making this statement to the people. And there's another one. There's another one. Let me see if I can find that one. Just bear with me 1 second. Let me see if bear with me 1 second. Um, he actually saw the destruction, the devastation of Jake, and he wept. And when it actually happened, it was horrifying. All right, here we go. Luke 23 and 28. Um, Luke 23 and 26. And as they led him away, they laid hold upon one Simon, a Cyrenian, coming out of the country, and on him they laid the cross, that he might bear it after Yahushua. And there followed him, a great company of people and of women, which also bewailed and lamented. So these women were crying for the Lord. They were crying for Yahushua because, you got to remember at this point, his face, he had the crown of thorns. He was bleeding. He was all bruised up. He was battered. He was tired. From the evening before. So he was just going through hell. So they started crying. But this is what Yahushua said. But Yahushua turning unto them said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. See? It says, For behold, the days are coming in the which they shall say, Blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bear, and the paps which never gave suck. It says, Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills cover us. In other words, they were going to be seeking for some type of refuge. For if they do these things in the green tea, what shall be done in the dry? So pretty much they would be looking for refuge, because of the onslaught that would be coming from those Roman soldiers. So when we go back to Luke 19 and 42, it says, saying, If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. So they didn't see the devastation that was coming to them. They couldn't see it. That's why Yahushua made a statement in Matthew, the 24th chapter. Let's get that real quick. Matthew 24 and 15. It says, when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, which we were just reading about, that stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. So who is the abomination of desolation? That was the Roman military that was going to come and desecrate the temple and take all of the vessels and the menorah and all that, the gold and the silver from the temple. It was headed, in history they tell you it was headed by Titus, but it was really headed by TJA, Tiberius Julius Alexander, which was an Israelite that knew he was an Israelite, that knew he was a Jew, but he cared not for that. So he's the one that led Titus, because Titus was very inexperienced general. So Vespasian, out of all the generals that he had, he chose TJA, or Tiberius Julius Alexander, to roll up in to Jerusalem, because he was a very experienced general. And I believe he put down a few rebellions of Jake out in Alexandria, Egypt, and other places. So they used him to bring down the devastation and the fall of Jake back then. All right. So the abomination of desolation are the Roman military that brought an end to what they call the Jewish state back then. It says, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountain. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Why? Because at that particular time was the days of vengeance, as we're going to read in the book of Luke. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. See? Why? Because that's why Yahushua is saying, so the daughters, don't cry for me or weep for me, because the time is going to come where they shall say, blessed are the barren which bear not, and the paps which never gave suck. Why? Because those children were going to be put to death. So it was a great insurrection upon Jake back then. But as Yahushua is telling them that their peace is hid from their eyes. So they're not knowing that in the near future, not too long in the future, they were going to suffer a great devastation, a great slaughter. So this is pretty much what's going on now, and this is why it says the things that are written aforetime are written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. So we use these incidents and these different examples in the scriptures to paint the picture of what's coming today, because it's going to be far worse than that. It's going to be far worse than that. So now let's go from there. Let's go back to Luke 19:43. For the days shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee. And that trench is what? That's going to be the military coming in and surrounding you. And this took place roughly around 66 AD to 70 AD, which is when they sacked and destroyed Jerusalem. But then it went all the way up until about 74 AD, with the last strong being Masada. So what I want to do real quick is I want to look up in the book of Luke 19. I want to look up that word trench. And that is the 43rd verse. I want to look up that word trench. And the word trench is karax. See? That's karax is the root word to karagma, which is a palisade or a stake. It says from charazo, to sharpen to a point akin to, through the idea of scratching. So pretty much an actual stake, because when the Romans would come and besiege a city, they would build walls sometimes around those cities to keep people from the outside to come in. And when they would build a wall around it, then from there they would attack, in certain cases. Like there was a case with Julius Caesar. He was attacking, this is when he fully conquered Gaul, I believe it was. And he besieged the city, built a wall around the city. But before they can actually do that, there was I think some of the men actually got away and were getting reinforcements. And when he found out that the reinforcements were coming, what he did was he built another wall behind them. So he had a wall in the front and a wall behind. So he was fighting both in both directions, and he won that battle. But they would actually take those certain trees and like certain fat branches of the tree and cut them into the palisades, and they would stick them into the ground and somehow make a fence, And so that was the part of the sieging. That was a part of the siege, which the Lord said that was going to happen to Jake. Right? It says a palisade or rampart, military mound for circumvallation in a siege trench. So that's what they were doing, because that was a part of the prophecy that was going to be brought out, to fulfill one of the curses in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, which we're going to get that now. Deuteronomy 28, and let's start at, start at 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. Who was that? That was the Roman armies, which the Romans were nothing but Edomites at that time that spoke Latin and Greek. The Greeks were Edomites that spoke Greek, and some of them spoke Latin. It says, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, because Jake didn't understand the Latin language. Remember, you had the common language of Israel, which was the Hebrew, and then you had the Aramaic, which was the language of the upper crust. When you go back during the time of the Assyrian Empire, Rabshakeh, and I forget the other individual that came to Jerusalem, what did they do? They came speaking Hebrew and saying that they were going to do this and that to the king and to the people and this, that, and the other. And what did the upper crust, the men of that were higher up, under the king, what did they tell them? They said, look, don't speak to us in the Jews' language, speak to us in the Aramaic, for we understand it. So the people didn't understand the Aramaic. the common people. So the common language that they spoke was Hebrew. So when the Romans came about, they didn't understand what they were saying because they were not learned. It was just the people that were like the Apostle Paul, men like that were brought up under, that were brought up in noble homes that spoke the Greek language and the Latin language, and the Hebrew and the Aramaic and different languages at that time. See, but the common people didn't understand it. That's what the Lord said, that you're not going to understand their tongue. A nation of fierce continents, and they were a nation of fierce continents because people feared them. That's why you will have certain nations that will try to make leagues with the Romans so that they can find favor in them and be a ally instead of a foe. It says, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. So we're right now what we're reading is the prophecy of what Yahushua told those women. Don't weep for me, don't weep for me, but weep for yourself and for your children. Because what's going to happen to you in the near future, you're not going to, it's hid from your eyes right now. You don't even understand the magnitude of what's coming for you. And this is pretty much what we're telling Jake out here today, that the things that are about to happen to you, you have no clue or no idea because they're hid from your eyes. And you're going to get caught up in that melee. And all of this shit that you see going on with the coronavirus and the and the looting and the rioting and all that, that is all a part of the plans of the illuminated ones on the left-hand side of the Most High to cause Jake to do these things so that they can be justified in rolling on them. Just like they would they justified themselves in rolling on Jake back in 70 AD. So this is 70 AD pretty much all over again, but it's going to be far worse. It's going to be far worse. The technology is far greater. The tactics that they've amounted over the years is far greater. They have a far greater infrastructure. They have greater technology. They have places where they can intern many, thousands and thousands and millions of people. So it's gonna be bad out here for Jake, man. See, while they laughing and joking and giggling and talking shit and snapping, at the men of the Lord, talking shit about the men of the Lord and the words that they speaking, which are the words of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai, they don't realize that they're marking themselves. And that pretty soon, when all hell breaks loose, they're gonna feel that crunch. They're gonna feel that the power of the Lord working through this devil. Like the scriptures say, that he beareth not the sword in vain. And you see how everything that they're doing, they're just not rolling on the people. They're enacting laws into the books. They're calling out laws that are already in the books to be able to do this so that they can be justified. And that's why they use this legislation, to justify their actions. Now, when we go to Isaiah 10:1, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, because these laws that they're passing are unrighteous laws that they're using to their benefit because they want a new world order. They want a new world government. They want a new world agenda. And they plan on achieving that. But the way they're doing it is what? Through laws, through legislation. And that's why we're reading this. And when you go into those different empires, they had certain laws that if you didn't do this, if you didn't do that, guess what? You would be persecuted, thrown in jail, killed, whatever. It's no different today. So in 70 AD, there was lawlessness going on. There were a lot of uprising and revolts. There was revolutionaries back then that were warring against the Roman armies. They were warring against their own people. They were killing their own people. So there was lawlessness in the streets. And Jerusalem at the time was a province of the Roman Empire. So they can't have that. They had to maintain law and order. And this is why Nero Herod Trump, said that if these mayors and senators and stuff don't quell the situation, he's going to send in the military. So pretty much what's that? Martial law, where the military governs or takes over the government. You see? So we're witnessing the same exact thing today that was going on back then. So now, back in Isaiah 10, woe unto them that the decree unrighteous decrees, and their right grievousness which they have prescribed. And that's what they're doing. It's grievousness which they're prescribing, which goes back to what? To the scripture in Revelation that they spake as a dragon. This draconian law that they have, that they're pushing out there, is pretty much causing the life and liberty of the people to be an oppressive state, in an oppressive state. You know, and this is why you have civil unrest. Even though you have Edomites out there starting it, and Antifa and other agent provocateurs, you know, the anger of Jake too is jumping in on there. And then, on the other hand, you have these simple-minded Jakes out there that are just rioting just to riot, just because they want, you know, they want stuff that they can keep, either sell or wear, or whatever the case is. You know, but all this lawlessness is going to lead to what happened in 70 AD, but worse. So it says, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless. And that's what they're doing, because they use these different laws that they put into place to rob the fatherless at the end. That's why it says that the servant is borrowed to the lender, or the lender is borrowed to the servant is borrowed to the lender. And that's why they got people in this debt slavery, you know. And that's why they plan on rolling out the microchip, which is the mark of the beast, because that microchip is a sure sign that whoever has that microchip is a branded slave to whoever slave master or slave owner they belong to. Because there's a debt out there that hasn't been paid and can't be paid, because the money that they used to create the debt has no value to it. So there's no way that you can pay it off. So it just kept compounding interest. And the interest is growing exponentially to where it is nearly impossible. Not nearly, it is impossible to pay that debt back. So what is the solution? The people that owe the debt have to become slaves. And all of their goods that they have to go and be transferred from the hands of the people to the hands of the international banking families and whoever else of them have this power, and whoever this debt is owed to. Just like during the time of Egypt, you know, when the people were catching hell, what did they do? They went and they sold. They brought money to buy food, and guess what happened? After the food ran out, after the money ran out and the food ran out, they had to do what? They had to sell their lands and themselves as slaves to the Pharaoh in order to be able to eat, because they owed a debt. And that's the same thing today. It's debt. It's a slavery by way of debt. So going back to Deuteronomy 28 and 51, and he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land, and they did that until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. And that's why you had cannibalism back then, because they had nothing else left to eat, because the Romans took everything. And he shall besiege thee in thy gates. Now let's look up this word besiege. That's the same thing we're reading in Luke 19 about the trench that was brought upon them. So let's go to Deuteronomy 28, and what verse is that? 52. Let's look up the word besiege. It's tazarar. Tazarar. It says to cramp, literally or figuratively, transitively or intransitively. And the cramp is what? A besieging, which is what? To have people in a concentrated area, in a concentrated region, which is going to happen again today. This, what we're reading in Deuteronomy 28, happened in 70 AD. But what we're reading there, you know, as an example of history, we can apply it to today. That just like it happened back then, it's going to happen today. Now let's go real quick to 2nd Ezra chapter 16 and verse 68. For behold, the burning wrath of a great multitude is kindled over you. And we're witnessing that wrath being kindled over Jake, but it hasn't really fully taken The fire hasn't really been turned up yet. It says, um, and they shall take away certain of you. See, take away certain of you, and feed you, being idle. And what is that? Being idle, being besieged, being in a trench, being in a concentration camp or a detention center, somewhere where they can hold a large group of people. And that's why they've been investing in these empty military bases and turning them into internment camps. And they already had internment camps from World War II. So it's not impossible that they're going to do it again, but this time it's going to be far worse. It says, with things offered unto idols, and they that consent unto them shall be had in derision and in reproach, and trodden under foot. For there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. So the main persecution is coming against who? The Israelites. And that's why you have individual camps out there and in protest, you know, like well, different camps out there in protest, because they're trying to they're you seeing that Jake, so-called Negroes and Latinos, are being blamed for these rioting and looting. And then if they see the Hebrew Israelites out there, then they're going to equate that to the Hebrew Israelites also. So the majority of these people are working for these bankers directly or indirectly. Because why would you even get involved in all of that? Did not Yahweh Shai say, when you see these things happen, flee to the mountains? So what the fuck are you doing running to the trouble, you know, when the Lord said don't be around that shit? Got a lot of sellouts out there, man. A lot of fucking sellouts that the Lord's gonna deal with. A lot of motherfuckers took that bribe, took that Judas purse, and the Most High's gonna deal with every last one of them. They shall be like madmen, sparing none. And that's the point. They shall be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. And that's what there's going to be, a spirit of vengeance in these devils, you know. And you got so-called black devils, you got so-called Latino devils, you got so-called Native American Indian devils that are a part of these forces. You know, there was an incident, whether staged or not, where these two teenagers, either teenagers or maybe they're a little older, that are in college, I believe, they broke the curfew. I forget where it was. I think it was Atlanta. And 6 cops grabbed them up, tased them, fucked their ass up. And guess what? 4 or 5 of them were Jakes. Looked like Judites, or you know, and maybe one Edomite. Because they show you that Jake is the worst fucking enemy on the planet. They're worse than Esau. Especially these Jakes that are in law enforcement and in the military. For the most part, a lot of them are worse than fucking Edomites. Because they just have, especially the darker persuasion ones. The darker they are, the more they feel that they have to appease master. You know? And they got to go above and beyond. You know? Even like the movie, not the movie, the song that Ice Cube did years ago. I forget the name of the song. You know, but he said, don't let it be a black and a white one. Because why? Because the so-called black one, he's gonna show out for the so-called white man. Show him how devoted he is to the cause. You know, so the Most High is gonna deal with a lot of you Israelites out there, and that's why 2/3 of you are gonna be destroyed. You know, and like Elder Yashua said, we're not gonna shed a tear for you, man. You know, like that woman that was crying because of what happened. Yeah, that was fucked up what happened, but you know what? We're not shedding a tear because of the fact that this word has been going out. You got to remember, some of these people that are catching hell right now are some of the people that walk by camps in different cities and wave their hand and talk shit and call the cops on brothers and different things of that nature. The Lord said that when he called, they refused. So guess what? When you call, the Lord's going to refuse you. And this is why it says that knowledge and wisdom shall be the stability of thy times and strength of salvation. Because you're going to have certain cats that's going to see this and they're going to get all, you know, messed up over Jake getting mowed down. This is the judgment of the Lord, man. That's why it says wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times and strength of salvation. So now let's go back Matter of fact, I read a little more of this. It says, "For they shall waste and take away their goods and cast them out into the streets. It says, then shall be known who are my chosen, and they shall be tried as gold in the fire. Hear, O ye my beloved, saith the Lord, behold, the days of trouble are at hand, but I will deliver you from the same. Be ye not afraid, nor neither doubt, for the Most High is your guide." You know, so the Most High is going to take care of us in these times. So we dealt with that. We dealt with the trench, but you know what? Building on the trench. Let me go back to that definition. Let me see what else, what other juicy juice we got. Tazarar, um, cramp, literally or figuratively, transitively or intransitively, adversary, being, afflict, affliction, besiege, bind up, be in, bring, distress, enemy, narrower, oppress, pangs, shut up. So trouble, straight. So pretty much these devils are closing the icy grip on Jake. And it's going to get more and more intense and worse and worse. They did phase 1, which was coronavirus. Now they're in phase 2, which is the riots and the looting. Phase 3, who knows what that could be. You know, it could be the martial law, you know, or it could be, you know, in one of those phases, they might bring that virus back. Who knows what these devils are? It says that their heart is deep. They're very treacherous, man. So now let's go back. We finished with that. Back in Deuteronomy 28:52, and he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high fenced walls come down, wherein thou trustest, throughout all thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy power hath given thee. Let me see, there's a precept there, 52 G. Okay, that's going to 2 Kings 25. That's something, might be going to something else. But all right, so now let's go back to Luke. Let's go back to Luke 19:43. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemy shall cast a trench about thee, meaning they're going to surround you. They're going to besiege you. And this is going back to 7 AD, like I said. But we could use this as an example of what happened then to what's going to happen now, but even worse. And compass thee around and keep thee in on every side. So pretty much what happened with this coronavirus, that was a siege, but it was a light siege. This looting can lead to martial law, can lead to stricter lockdown, stricter besieging, you know? And it's going to intensify more and more. The rioting and looting might slow down when they send the military in, martial law. Because you got to remember that these jakes that's rioting and looting, they're just following behind what somebody else is doing. And a lot of these riots and lootings, especially in these stores and fires, are all being started by Esau. There's Edomites that's coming from their neighborhoods, fucking Jake's neighborhood up, and Jake, like an asshole, follows right behind him and rips the whole fucking neighborhood up. And now when it's time for them to go out to go get something to eat or go to the supermarket or something, everything is fucking torn up. And you think that they're gonna let you go into their neighborhood? But it was Esau that came down and started a lot of that shit. And Jake just followed along like the asshole that he is. And now your shit is fucked up. Your fucking neighborhood looks like a goddamn disaster zone. Like there was a fucking actual war going on there. Meanwhile, the same Edomites that came into your neighborhood, they're back at home chilling, eating, you know, going to the grocery stores, to their Whole Foods, to their supermarkets, you know, shopping. There's nothing going on in their neighborhood. But then come a certain time, they get dressed up, shipped out, and then they go and tear shit up again. And then you assholes, some of you are waking up because you're starting to see it, you're starting to record them. But some of you are right there in the fucking melee right with them. And like my man Hassan Campbell said, he said, look, man, everything you're doing is documented. They got cameras everywhere. And the one Jake said, well, everybody got masks. He said, look, they're tracking you by your phone, your GPS. And the Jakes just shut the fuck up. And they plan on doing mass roundup. All them people that was out there tearing up police cars and breaking into these places that are on camera, they're gonna get all of them. Jake ain't too bright. That's what the scripture said, that the children of this world are wiser than the children of light, man. So verse 44, and shall lay thee even with the ground, meaning what? You're gonna die. You're gonna be killed. It says, and thy children within thee. So even women that are pregnant, women that have toddlers and children and young and infants, they're gonna suffer it. It says, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knowest not the time of thy visitation. Because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. So in other words, you didn't see that these perilous times were upon you. You know? And Yahushua told him. He said it, when you see Jerusalem besieged with armies, flee into the mountains. But everybody didn't see that. And that's why a big portion of Jakes got massacred back then during the Roman Empire. Some of them got shipped out to them different colonies that they had, penal colonies. You have the island of Patmos and many other islands where people that came against the Roman government were banished to, like the Apostle John. But he was abandoned there because of the word, for the testimony of the word. Not for revolting, not for looting or none of that stuff. Now, let's see. Why? That's 44. Okay. All right, so now let's go to the 21st chapter. Let me see if I can find this one in the 21st chapter. Okay, here we go. Start at 19. Luke 21 and 19. In your patience possess you your souls. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, see? And this is what we're about to start witnessing. You have all these military, National Guard, all in these major cities. Because they're already prepared. All they have to do is just enact it, like Trump said. If they don't get the situation under control, then guess what? We're going to send in the military. And the military is already in place. Let's go to Luke 21 and 20. Let's go to the word armies. Stratopedon. A camping ground, that is, by implication, a body of troops, army. And you seeing that happening. But Jake is, because Jake is not into looking things up and studying things and researching. Jake is into fun. Anything that has to do with fun, they with it. Anything that has to do with work or looking stuff up or using their brain, they don't do. So that's why they'll see like a National Guard troop in their neighborhood, and they'll think that's just normal, because they have no clue of what's going on. That's the same way it happened back then. Same way it happened during the time of 70 AD. They were none the wiser, and before you know it, the Roman military was rolling on them, fucking them up, killing them, And that was a very treacherous time for Israel. That was a very treacherous time for Jake back then. So it says, and when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh, just like in 70 AD. This applies to 70 AD. But look at it spiritually today. The military is everywhere in these major cities. So it says that the desolation thereof is nigh. So this time, this desolation and the insurrection that's going to come upon the people that fear the Lord is nigh, it's near. Everything is in place. All they got to do is just give the word. You don't even need the right crisis. The crisis is already there. There's crisis all over the place. All they need is the word to go out and enact the National Guard, and then the fireworks begin. And that's where they're allowing these people to go off and go crazy and break up and burn up police cars and all that. You know, run cops over. You know, shoot at cops and just do all kind of crazy shit, so that they can say, well, look, the police are being overwhelmed. They can't handle this crowd, so we got to send in the military. And notice they're doing it in stages. Trump is talking about it. He talked about it before. He's talking about it more. Next step is boom. If they don't quell it, the military be there. And the military is already there. You know? So it says, and when you shall see Jerusalem compassed about with armies, know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. And let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto, for these be the days of vengeance. These be the days of vengeance. What vengeance? Well, we just read about in Deuteronomy 28 about the besieging of Jerusalem. And you can read more of that. And that's exactly what took place. That's exactly what took place. And that's exactly what's going to take place today. Let 70 AD be a mirror or an example of what's going to happen today, but far worse. Because remember, that was just that province there. You're talking about the whole of the United States. You know, and the case, you know, because we're here, you know, we're not abroad. There's other shit going to happen abroad, but just here in the so-called United States, you know, in these major cities, when the military come in, so you could just see how much vast, you know, how much vaster or bigger America is than Jerusalem and those in that region there. All right. So it says, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Which it goes back to Daniel, it goes back to Deuteronomy, it goes back to other prophecies, you know, of the military getting jacked up. Yeah, and I'm gonna get ready to roll up out of here because, you know, the point is pretty much made, almost, or pretty much made. And these bugs are starting to get crazy out here today. They're doing kamikazes on me. So with that, you know, I pray that you brothers have been edified. You know, if the spirit hits me again, you know, I'll do a little something later. You know, but these bugs are getting a little crazy out here, the kamikaze style. But you know, with that, I pray that your brothers have been edified. Until the next time I say shalom, stay strong. You know, keep your eyes open on the prophecies. Things are happening. You know, it's on. You know, it's on. You know, and you just keep your eye on what on this devil hashtag bunker boy, which is Donald Trump, and watch what he's doing, watch what he says, because he's going to be the one to enact that martial law. You know, if these so-called senators can't get it together. You know, so with that, I say shalom.